Times it gets you into exclusive places. As an AFA insider, you'll get information about issues and policies that can dramatically impact our families and our Christian rights, and you won't have to travel to D.C. or even dress up to get it. Find out more and sign up at afa.net/activism.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News on the Hour. I'm Chad Groening. A federal court has blocked President Donald Trump from setting many of his reciprocal tariffs against most of the country's trading partners. Fox's Mark Meredith reports from Washington.
This decision by the Court of International Trade will block one of the president's most widely used executive actions of his second term. The three-judge panel says the president's actions do not fall under the Emergency Powers Act. The ruling could certainly further delay ongoing trade talks with countries like India, China, Japan. The White House says it will appeal. We heard from a spokesperson overnight who told Fox it is not for unelected judges to decide how to properly address a national emergency. President Trump pledged to put America first, and the administration is committed to using every lever of executive power to address this crisis and restore American greatness.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the U.S. will begin revoking the visas of some Chinese students, including those with connections to the Communist Chinese Party or studying in critical fields. In the 2023-2024 school year, more than 270,000 international students were from China, making up roughly a quarter of all foreign students in the U.S. On Tuesday, Rubio halted the scheduling of new visa interviews for international students. Ohio is considering a bill that would make the month between Mother's Day and Father's Day Natural Family Month. AFN Steve Jordahl reports the bill is getting the expected pushback.
Ohio House Bill 262 would make the month between the second Sunday in May and the third Sunday in June Natural Family Month. Bill sponsor State Representative Josh Williams says it's meant to point out and solve a pressing problem in Ohio and the rest of the country.
So Natural Family Month is to celebrate a family unit that has the ability to help fight back our declining birth rates.
The birth rates in both Ohio and the U.S. are well below the 2.1 children per mother needed to keep the country running. And Williams says there are added benefits to intact families with married moms and dads.
A child that is born in a single-parent household without a father being present in the home has a higher likelihood of being raised in poverty, has a higher likelihood of dropping out of school, and has a substantially higher likelihood of being sent to prison.
But he says the bill is being strongly opposed by LGBT groups in the state who say it's somehow an attack on them.
We do not see Pride Month as an attack on straight individuals, straight couples, and natural families. But somehow, as soon as you try to be inclusive of what for a long time was the mainstream norm, all of a sudden you're attacking their alternative lifestyle.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
An organization is requesting the IRS to investigate a top-ranked Virginia high school. AFN's Chris Woodward has that story.
Defending Education wants the government to look into the activities of the Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology Partnership Fund, Incorporated. Sarah Parshall-Perry, Vice President and Legal Fellow at Defending Education.
It looks like the Thomas Jefferson High School benefited from foreign Chinese payments that were listed by its nonprofit fund, the Thomas Jefferson High School Fund, as a nonprofit donation, except they were not actually held by the nonprofit fund itself, but rather passed through to Thomas Jefferson High School in exchange for STEM curriculum and literal blueprints on how to create a clone of Thomas Jefferson High School with all of its technology as intellectual property in China itself.
AFN is seeking comment from the high school as well as the superintendent. Perry hopes to hear from the IRS within the next few months.
This very long complaint, it's factually dense, but it does provide a paper trail. I think that the IRS is going to want to look very closely at. It presents very troubling prospects, not the least of which was it evaded the requirements of federal tax law by actually reporting payments for services as charitable deductions or charitable donations so it could avoid the scrutiny of the IRS.
I'm Chris Woodward.
And that's American Family News on the Hour. I'm Chad Groening.
The political climate in America has changed. We've been given a reprieve, and we have to work together to take advantage of that momentum and effect even more cultural and spiritual change. We can rebuild America. The American Family Association is working to do just that, and when you join with your support, it helps maximize the impact. As our thanks, we'll give you a DVD of biblical financial advice from Rob West called Biblical Stewardship. Please visit afa.net and get started today.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome to today's issues. I'm Ed Vitagliano, sitting in for Tim Wildman today. I'd know what the date was if I had my sheet from 29. My producer, the 29th. Adam Sutton is sitting in for Brett Creeley. I'm just giving him a hard time, folks. I should know the date. Good grief. What kind of confidence do I instill in our listeners? Fred Jackson, you heard his attempts to help me out there. Good morning to you, Fred.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. One more day left in May. Well, two more. This remainder and tomorrow. And Chris Woodward, good morning to you.
Good morning. Happy Friday to our listeners in Australia.
Is it already Friday there?
It is.
In Australia?
Yeah, according to Google.
Okay. I don't think so.
31 days in May.
31 days in May. Talk about no confidence. 31 days in May, of course. It's 31 days in May.
And May is the 5th month of the year.
5th, you sure? All right. Well, listen, in my defense, I had 4 hours of sleep last night. I'm a little groggy. Wow. I'm glad my wife wasn't listening. I'm glad she doesn't listen. I'm glad she never listens. But I'm glad she wasn't listening today because she likes to remind me. You remember that time? You thought June has 30.
That's
I know
right.
that. July has 31. All right.
Shall we go through this?
No, I can't believe I
30
did that.
days have September, April, June, and November. All
Yeah.
the rest have.
Yeah. Okay. I've admitted that I was wrong.
Yeah.
I admit I was wrong, Diane. I don't know how much else you want me to say.
I do not remember being told that in school. I'm sure they taught
You
me
mean the little
that.
poem?
Yeah, and either I was asleep or absent that day. I'm not sure. But my kids know it by heart, and they tell me, and I'm like, let me look at my phone and double check. I mean, I don't know what to do.
All right. Well, this look. Let's just start over. Can we start over? Is this pre-recorded? All right, Chris. What do we got for our first story?
All right. We began the show yesterday talking about James Comey, and we're going to begin today's program talking again about James Comey. The reason being, Mr. Comey, the former FBI director, is now making headlines for ripping the new FBI director, Kash Patel, and other Trump administration staff, Dan Bongino, for their leadership abilities or lack thereof, and for reopening FBI cases. Just to give you a little bit of a sense of what Comey has to say about people like Dan Bongino, we'll begin with clip 1.
Something supported by a lot of conservatives out there. What do you make of this?
It's a little confusing to me, honestly. I'm sure it's a huge adjustment to go from being a podcaster to being the deputy director of the FBI, but I don't understand this tweet. First of all, I assume that the investigation of the pipe bomb that was found on January 6th was never closed. The FBI never closes such a thing, so I guess it means they're going to focus on it more. And as to the other things, I thought the Supreme Court marshal had investigated the leak of the opinion, the draft opinion. I don't know what the FBI's role is there. Cocaine at the White House, I thought the Secret Service investigated that, so I don't follow it and understand it. I also don't understand who the audience is for this tweet. The FBI often calls for public assistance or in matters of great public concern will announce an investigation to reassure the public. This seems much more narrowly targeted, maybe to a former podcast audience.
Now, I failed to mention going into this bite that one of those things that Bongino has posted on social media was their investigation of things like the pipe bomb case from 2021, January 6th of 2021. Now, to give you an idea of how Dan Bongino feels about former FBI Director James Comey, here's what Mr. Bongino said this morning on Fox and Friends, clip 2.
This man is a disgrace to the badge, the FBI, and the country. What he's doing right now one, going out in the media, taking shots at Cash. Cash doesn't belong. Cash was the chief of staff at the Department of. Cash is a patriot. Cash has served in numerous high-level roles, taking personal shots while you're on the beach, implying a threat towards the president, and blaming your wife about it. And let me just add about James Comey, Saint Comey, who walks around there moralizing to everyone how wonderful of a human being he is. What you said is absolutely accurate. We have wasted countless man-hours now running out tips to our tip line about people putting 8647 because of Jim Comey, because he cannot control himself and his emotions. He is a child. He is a big child. And let me tell you one more thing. Jim Comey taking a shot at the president. Oh, look at me. I'm such a victim. The president's going after me. He's making a ton of money on this book. The only person that got prosecuted was the president.
Well, listen, wow, it's a lot to digest here. So I thought James Comey was being pretty snarky. He wasn't completely wrong in terms of where those kinds of investigations fall. Like the Secret Service is supposed to investigate things like the drugs that were found in the White House. So he's not completely wrong, but I think Dan Bongino, and Fred, I'm going to pitch it to you. I think Bongino got this right. James Comey is trying to drum up business and has a lot to try to gloss over under his years at the FBI. And I also would say I'm not sure how helpful it is for Bongino to be tweeting, but in the era of Trump, and the Biden White House, members of the government tweet, they X or they Truth, with Truth Social. It's just a part of the way things are done, and Comey just sounds like he's a grumpy old man complaining about it. But it was clear he was prepared for this kind of question and wanted to belittle Bongino and Kash Patel, and I don't think it's fitting for Comey to do either. So,
yeah, Dan Bongino, who was a Fox contributor, and he left there, and he was a podcaster, and then he was named deputy FBI director.
And he was in law enforcement.
He was in law enforcement and military as well. So there is no love lost between, and if you didn't know that, if you just listened to what we just played, it becomes very evident. James Comey, we didn't hear much from him recently until the 8647.
Right.
The shells in the sand.
Yes.
Which just happened to, he's, in case people aren't familiar, he says he was on vacation.
Right.
Walking along the beach, and he said, oh, here's some shells arranged in 8647. And then he put it out on social media. And most people understand 86, the number stands for
get rid of.
47, most people interpreted that as being Donald Trump. All right.
47th president.
47th president. So he is being investigated for that. I think he's already been visited by Secret Service or somebody along that line. But here's the bottom line. And right away, a lot of people said they knew his book was coming out. James Comey had a book coming out. So they said, what a great way to get publicity, because he's been out of the radar as far as publicity goes for a long time. He's got a book coming out. He puts this out on social media, these shells. Now, a lot of people think that he was the one who arranged the shells. That has not been proven true or false yet. But there's just this tension. And let's face it, there is a tension between anybody that Donald Trump has appointed to these high-level positions. Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, Bongino. And this was the first time I've seen him on Fox since he got this position.
I think so.
He was a little bit guarded in what he had to say about a lot of different things. But I'm not sure if you have this, Chris, but he talked a lot about the environment that he and Kash Patel have found inside the FBI. He mentioned in the interview this morning that when they arrived, there were people within the FBI that said, thank God you guys are here.
Yeah.
All right. You got cut 3 on that?
Yeah, we do.
Yep. Let's play that, cut 3.
We were there a couple of weeks, and luckily there were a lot of people up there who grabbed us by the arm the minute we came in and said, thank you for being here. You know, we need to talk. There are people there who are really horrified at what happened. And there was a room, and we found stuff, a lot of stuff.
A hidden room.
I wouldn't call it hidden, but hidden from us at least, and not mentioned to us. And then we found stuff in there, and a lot of it's from the Comey era, and we are working on declassifying, just so you know, because I get the public, I totally understand people saying, well, do it now. The process is not all the information is ours to declassify. Some is other intelligence agencies. It's not, we literally can't do it.
So, yeah, the picture that Bongino painted for us this morning was that they're going to get, he and Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, are going to try to get to the bottom of a lot of things. They're investigating reports of things that happened during January 6th.
Right.
James Comey, remember when James Comey was director of the FBI? Donald Trump comes into office, and James Comey sent some people over to the Oval Office to do recordings. You know,
yes,
that was all part of it. So, I think at the very least, James Comey is trying to sell his book, but at the same time, I think there's a good deal of tension that's out there about how James Comey ran the FBI, because he was there when Hillary Clinton was being investigated.
Yes.
For the server in her bathroom somewhere.
Yeah.
And that she was basically allowed to walk away from all of that. The agents under James Comey basically were good friends of Hillary Clinton.
Right.
So there's a lot of history there. How much that Kash Patel and Bongino are going to be able to put out there to prosecute, that remains a big question.
And it just is bad practice in my mind. It's not smart to anger the people who very well could expose things that you did wrong when you were running the FBI. All the things you mentioned. Who knows what's in that room? The stuff, quote unquote, that's in that room. I think that what the Biden administration did by using the power of the federal government, broadly speaking, the intelligence branches, and specifically the Department of Justice, to go after Trump in ways that I think were probably illegal and prosecutable, but to go after Trump and people allied to him. Was it Michael Flynn, the one who was recorded by the FBI when the agents came over, and Flynn said, well, do I need a lawyer? Oh, no. We're just, and then they recorded him. And then when he was not sure about, some of the details, they came back later and said, you lied to the FBI. That kind of stuff. I think the current administration is going to find out a lot of those things. And James Comey is not doing himself any favors by acting this way towards Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. If you at least, now, to your point, he's trying to sell a book. So the more provocative he can be, the more times he's on the news, the more times his name is in the media, you sell more books. But who knows what's going to happen. I'm very interested in the FBI's possible involvement in January 6th. There are suspicions that there were at least informants, but were some of those FBI informants agging people on, trying to get them to go in and trying to break things? I hope we can find out some of those things. But we're going to be finding this stuff out, and I'm glad for it.
Here's the one case that I'm anxious to find out. Who ordered, remember the pro-life gentleman in Pennsylvania?
Is it Houck?
Mark Houck.
Mark Houck. I want to know who at the FBI ordered more than a dozen heavily armed FBI agents.
He was swatted.
To surround his house when he was in there with his kids. I think they were having breakfast or something.
Yeah.
Who ordered that?
They came in with weapons drawn.
For what? He was simply this pro-life advocate, was sitting on a sidewalk with his little boy. They were just there. They were confronted.
They were praying.
Yeah, they were confronted by a pro-abortion guy, and the pro-life guy gets charged. But at least 12 heavily armed FBI agents surround the house
at 7 a.m.
This is something you do for a drug lord or something of that nature. But for a guy who's on a sidewalk praying and you surround his house with heavily armed agents?
This pro-abortion guy was screaming in the face of his son.
Yes.
And he intervened, and I think there was some shoving back and forth, okay? This was became a legal matter in Philadelphia where the incident took place. All the Philadelphia law enforcement and prosecutors, they all dropped it.
Yes.
And when they did, the FBI got involved. And to your point, who authorized that?
Yeah.
Well, it came from someone in the Biden administration who was sending a message to all the pro-lifers who dared pray outside of abortion clinics.
I did look it up, and I'm not saying that it was this person that did authorize it, although he was running the FBI at the time. So the raid on Mark Houck's property was in 2022, September of 2022. The person running the FBI at the time was Christopher Wray.
Okay. But listen, the other thing I wanted to mention is we said for years throughout the entirety of the Biden administration, it's 4 years, we said we suspect that there are tons of FBI agents, the rank and file, men and women who do most of the legwork in the FBI that are probably horrified, just like Bongino said. Horrified at what was going on and the abuse of the FBI and the tarnishing of the FBI's image with these shenanigans. And that, but what are they going to do? They can't say anything. The Biden administration, I'm guessing, dragged those who are sympathetic to their ideology, the Biden's administration's ideology, up to the forefront. They were running things. What are you going to do if you're a rank and file member? And this is what Bongino says, is apparently these people came up to them and said, we're glad you're here. We can breathe a little easier. And maybe we can see some restoration of the image of the FBI.
Yes.
I mean, we used to watch television programs. The FBI were the heroes. They sought out communist cells and terrorists and bad guys of all stripes, and they were like white knights in shining armor. And you want to keep that image for the FBI, and I don't blame folks there for saying thank you for being here. All right, what else we got?
In lighter news,
Yeah.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio has announced the U.S. will begin revoking the visas of some Chinese students, including those studying in, quote, critical fields. The interesting thing with this is that, as we point out in a story on AFN.net, China is the second largest country of origin for international students in the U.S., behind only India. This action against some Chinese students comes as President Trump wants schools like Harvard not to have foreign students anymore because many of the foreign students that go to Harvard have anti-Israel views or anti-American views. So Trump has told Harvard, hey, you can't have any more foreign students. And Marco Rubio is now saying we're going to begin revoking the visas of some Chinese students. I've got some audio here of President Trump himself talking about the need to take a second look or a closer look at these foreign students wanting to come study here. Clip 10.
We want to know where those students come. Are they troublemakers? What countries do they come? And we're not going to, if somebody is coming from a certain country and they're 100% fine, which I hope most of them are, but many of them won't be, you're going to see some very radical people. They're taking people from areas of the world that are very radicalized, and we don't want them making trouble in our country. And I think they should have a cap of maybe around 15%. Not 31%. We have people who want to go to Harvard and other schools. They can't get in because we have foreign students there. But I want to make sure that the foreign students are people that can love our country.
Now, Harvard is challenging, and they've already gotten one decision temporarily against Trump's efforts to bar Harvard from having foreign students. But Harvard is saying, hey, students are free to come here. People want to come here. We're well known. We offer all kinds of degree programs in fields that these foreign students want to get a degree in. And also, we make a lot of money off foreign students wanting to come here. And somebody that talked about that today in response to President Trump's remarks was Fox News legal contributor and professor Jonathan Turley. Clip 4.
These foreign students are something of a meal ticket for universities. Most of them pay the full rate, full tuition. And so universities are eager to get them because they represent a significant financial component for them. When you're also squeezing grants, even a university the size of Harvard begins to feel that on the bottom line.
Now, with all due respect to Harvard, they're not a state school in the sense that they literally live on whatever a state government gives them. Okay, Harvard is sitting on an endowment of $53.2 billion. So you're going to find a hard sell on the American people, Harvard, if you're going to say, hey, we need these students to keep the lights on. You've got billions of dollars in the bank account you're not doing anything with.
But now that is a private university.
It is a private university,
Okay.
yes.
Well, Fred, the story that we have, by the way, on American Family News, afn.net, folks, check it out. It says that more than 270,000 international students were from China, making up roughly a quarter of all foreign students in the United States. And Marco Rubio said that some of these Chinese students have connections to the Chinese Communist Party. Admittedly, Harvard has every right to accept whoever it wants as students. I don't like the idea of American students being aced out by foreign students, but Harvard is a private university. They can do that. But just like they can do that, the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security is also in charge of granting visas.
Yes.
And so if Harvard wants to squawk and say, hey, we have every right under the Constitution to do what we want to do, then the U.S. State Department and the Department of Homeland Security has every right to do what they want to do. Seems fair to me.
Yeah. Knowing what we know about China and the communist government there, do you think it's a stretch to believe that maybe the Chinese government is picking certain young people to apply to come to universities in the United States to take advantage of the many multi-million-dollar grants given to schools like Harvard and some of these other schools? And when Marco Rubio talks about sensitive areas, these students from China being in sensitive areas, let's just say maybe they're doing research on viruses. Maybe they're doing research on weaponry. And is it a stretch then to believe if the Chinese government is selecting what young people to come here, that information is making its way back to Beijing?
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's very basic type thinking about this.
I don't trust commies. All right. I know I sound like I'm from the 70s, but I don't trust commies. I don't trust communists. I don't trust China. And someone from ancient times, I wish I could remember who this was, one of their sayings was that you don't deal with your enemies on the basis of what you think they will do. You deal with them on the basis of what they can do.
Yes.
And if they can do it, you deal with it on the – you don't have to prove that they would do it or they will do it or they are doing it. And so China – although we have close trade ties, they're an enemy. They're an enemy of the free West. They want to send the communist ideology all over the world. They want to evangelize students, but worse than that, they want to undermine the United States. I have no problem with believing that because they can spy on us through these students, that's the way we need to approach having these students in the country. Yeah. China buys property. They buy farmland all over the world. They buy companies so they can get their footprint inside that nation, and we ought to be dealing with them based on what they could do now that they own X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And with all these young people in the country, I think we ought to be absolutely careful, and I applaud the Trump administration for approaching this in the way whoever that old guy was that I just quoted, maybe misquoted a little bit, dealing with the Chinese commies in that way. All right, folks, my Barry Goldwater speech is over. We're going to take a short break. Hope you will join us when we come back.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Occasionally one comes across a story that speaks so loudly. There are as many stories as there are people, but they don't all come to the public's notice. One did recently. I'll let the person tell it in his own words. Having suffered a traumatic experience in childhood, he says, I've always had an abhorrence of funerals and dead people. When my dad died, I flew back east for the services. As I viewed his cold, lifeless body in the casket, I felt nothing. That inanimate figure bore no relationship to the pop who had always been so happy-go-lucky and full of life. But his strengths were also his weaknesses. His carefree, devil-may-care attitude made life a constant struggle for Mom. Pop was a traveling salesman, but he was much better at traveling than he was at selling. In death, as in life, he left stacks of unpaid bills. When the moment came to close the casket, my heart dropped as I saw Mom lean over and kiss him. Surely she didn't expect me to do that. Then I heard her whisper in his ear, as she had done countless times before when he had left for trips, "Bye, Pops. I'll be seeing you." She was sending him off on his final journey with a promise that she would join him. The writer concluded with these words, "That gesture was a lifetime of education for me. It told me more about Mother's love for Dad than anything I had witnessed in all my years at home. I would not have missed it for the world." You know, there are a lot of folks in this old world who carry signs and shout slogans of love. They get the headlines. And many times, few of them know very little about what they shout. There are others who practice day in and day out what the signs and shouts say. Love causes a person to do many things, nearly all good. Perhaps those who wish to have trial marriages could learn something from the mother and wife mentioned above. Seems as though many of our modern folk have forgotten the for better, for worse in the marriage vows. We've made a terrible mistake in judgment in our country. It is either the elite of society or the rags of the radicals who get the spotlight when love and marriage are mentioned. Perhaps it would help a little to shine a light on people like Mom. For it's that type person who keeps our country together. Those who stick it out through thick and thin. Those who take seriously the vows they take. Those who go on living and loving day in and day out without anybody shouting any hoorays for them. Yes, it is the people whose love is genuine enough to carry them over the tough parts that we're indebted to. You know, love is a 4-letter word, and it covers a multitude of sins and shortcomings.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. Jeremiah 29:13.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
And welcome back to today's issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson and Chris Woodward. And now one of our favorite people, Alex McFarland, who is co-host of Exploring the Word, along with Bert Harper. Good morning to you, Alex.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Where are you today? You at home, on the road, or what?
I am in South Carolina working on our speaker series that we have called Conversations That Matter. We just hosted Dinesh D'Souza, and June 15 we have Gary Chapman, who wrote The 5 Love Languages. So in this summer biblical worldview series, we had Dinesh to talk about the role of God in government. We've got Gary Chapman on June 15 to talk about the importance of family. Charlie Kirk is coming later on to talk about young people and worldview. Then Lauren Green of Fox News, we're doing a roundtable on the status and future of the American church. So in addition to our youth camps all summer, which start Sunday in Montana, we've got summer camp for the grown-ups too, you might say, which is a series of worldview conferences.
Wow. Okay. So these the folks you're interviewing here, is this going to be? Is this at one of the conferences, or is it videos? Yeah. How do people access this?
Down here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Myrtle Beach, for those that may not know, is kind of a big resort area. It's like the most visited beach in America, and there are a lot of theaters here, kind of like Branson, Missouri, or something. Yeah. So what we've done, we've rented a theater, and we're having different speakers in. And the cool thing about it, Ed, is there's live Q&A. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we had Dinesh D'Souza. People came from as far away as Indiana.
Wow.
And when we have Charlie Kirk on August 21, yes, there will be open Q&A. If you've ever wanted to ask Charlie Kirk a question in person, you'll have that opportunity. So what we do, because I've been doing events for a long time, and there's just something really special about hearing a world-class communicator with compelling content, being able to ask your questions. So, we're trying to ignite just a revival, of course, for the gospel, but for biblical worldview in all areas of life. And we, like Dr. Gary Chapman, I personally think Gary Chapman is probably, with his book, The 5 Love Languages, Dr. Gary Chapman has probably saved more marriages than just about any other author I know. And so he'll be our next speaker. And this is at my website, alexmcfarland.com/conversations. And but then I got to tell you this too. Bert Harper and I, for 13 years, Bert's been with me on Exploring the Word, over 3,000 shows.
Wow.
And our third book is coming out this fall. To God be the glory.
Amen. Well, it sounds like you're just a little bit busy, so we do appreciate you being on with us today. We appreciate your insights and your wealth of knowledge and your experience. When you come on here on today's issues, you bring all those things with you to help kind of bolster the brain power here on the program.
Oh, my goodness.
Chris, introduce the story. And you have a little bit of sound.
I do,
and we'll turn Alex loose.
Okay. So in recent days, Colorado has updated its anti-discrimination law to, in its words, protect transgender individuals in the state of Colorado. For those not aware, Colorado now requires people, individuals, and even businesses and business owners to use someone's preferred pronouns. You have to refer to he if he wants to be a she. And all these kinds of things.
Or else what?
Or else you're going to be penalized, you're going to be prosecuted, these kinds of things by the government there in the state of Colorado. Now, an athletic apparel company by the name of XXXY Apparel is suing Colorado over that law, saying you're violating our First Amendment rights. And I have audio from the attorney, Suzanne Beecher. She's with Alliance Defending Freedom, the law firm now representing XXXY. And she's talking to us in this clip about their lawsuit against Colorado over this anti-discrimination law. Clip 7.
Once again, we see Colorado has passed a law that is censoring speech, and this is threatening the rights of the people across the state. Our client, as you said, is an online athletic apparel retailer, and the mission of the client is to advocate for women's sports in spaces. And central to this mission is the idea that men and women are different. But under this law, Colorado is censoring XXXY's ability to use accurate pronouns, biologically accurate pronouns, and to refer to male athletes competing in women's sports by their given names. So this is a clear First Amendment violation, and that's why XXXY is bringing this challenge.
Now, the reason we thought of bringing Alex in on this is because Alex worked with Focus. You're well familiar with the state of Colorado. You know how things work out there. What did you think about this story?
Well, I think I'm glad that XXXY Athletics is suing the state of Colorado, and I pray that ADF will successfully advocate, because the rights of this company really touch on the rights of all of us. And let me say, yes, Angie and I lived there for 8 years. It was one of my incredible privileges to work for James Dobson, and I was in policy there with people like Tom Menery, and a lot of great things that God did through Focus on the Family and is doing. And I was profoundly honored to be a part of that organization, just as I'm honored to be a part of AFA. But let me say this. The Yale Law Journal about 10 years ago wrote an article called Against Immutability. And what the Yale Law Journal documented was, really since the early 70s, as gay rights advocates worked, and there were some behind-the-scenes philosophies that were very intentional about arguing against constitutional protection for immutable characteristics only. Now, here's the point. Transgender behavior or homosexual behavior, and we all know since the Obergefell decision in 2015, to this very moment, to this horribly unconstitutional HB 251312 in Colorado that makes misgendering illegal. Just hang with me, folks. Here's the deal. The U.S. Constitution guarantees protection for what are called immutable rights. Immutability means things that can't be changed. The right to life. You're a human being. And anti-discrimination laws, they applied to gender and ethnicity. You're a male or a female. Females could not be paid less for the same job. You can't, financially defraud a woman merely because she's a female. Her femaleness is immutable. And of course, the civil rights legislation of the 1960s, which was very appropriate. But here's the point. Sexual activity has become an ethnicity. And that's just false, because I've met many former homosexuals. I've interviewed former transgenders. I've never met a former Hispanic or a former Caucasian. And so, like in Colorado, these delusional words like dead naming. It's hard to believe that in American law would be these absolutely vacuous manufactured terms like misgendering and dead naming. But there's no limit. And I'll say this, I'll throw it back to you guys. I had a friend, he was a brilliant writer, Christopher Hitchens. He was not a Christian, as far as I know, sadly, but he was a very smart dude. He wrote for Harper's, a lot of publications. Hitchens, near the end of his life, and we debated, I moderated debates. I actually had him on AFR one time. But he became a very vocal pro-lifer and pro-constitutionalist, because Hitchens, even though he was not a born-again Christian, he was smart enough, like many others, to realize if we kick down the boundaries and any behavior can demand legal affirmation, where's it going to end? The Constitution was genius in that it said these are God-given, immutable, unchangeable rights: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And now, because of the LGBTQ trans activists, yes, they've forced their demands on the rest of the country, but the result has been really jeopardizing the preservability of the U.S. Constitution and our nation itself.
Alex, it's Fred here. Isn't this just another front in what we should expect as I believe we're in the last days before the Lord returns. Another front in spiritual warfare, to really go after God's creation, to really go after and trying to diminish who God is and what he designed.
Well, it is, Fred. You nailed it. And, I could summarize history as follows. In Genesis 1:26, God's word says that humans are made in God's image. And, here's history. Satan could not kill off God, so he has tried to harm the ones made in God's image. The war on gender, the war on masculinity, the war on the unborn, all of these things have been Satan working through many human operatives to try to demean, dehumanize those made in God's image. Satan could not kill off God, so he's tried to harm the ones made in God's image. And let me just say this, folks. Transgenderism is demonic. And I'll tell you why. It's one thing to say, God, you can't tell me how to behave. The Ten Commandments says, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie. God can't tell me how to behave. But transgenderism, the LGBTQ trans worldview, essentially says, God, you can't even define what I am or who I am. God, you have no claim on my life whatsoever. That is the posture, and that is demonic.
Alex, before we let you go, we didn't tell you that we were going to toss this to you. I think I know what you're going to say here, but someone sent around an article, I think it was last night, from, I think, Citizen Magazine, which is produced by Focus on the Family. Mm-hmm. Sure. And here's the headline: Southern Poverty Law Center finally names Focus on the Family a hate group. Now, most of our listeners have heard of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and American Family Association, along with other pro-family groups, has been on their quote-unquote hate list for many years. I did not know until I read this article that they had not put Focus on the Family on that list of hate groups until just recently. So you have connections with Focus on the Family. What is behind the Southern Poverty Law Center putting pro-family and pro-life groups on a hate list and saying we are hate groups?
Wow. Well, it's like Isaiah chapter 5 that says, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. The SPLC is the personification of that. And what you've got to understand is that, they have named 1,371 groups as hate groups, quote unquote, extremist. Now, those that, AFA, and I've been listed, for things I've said on Exploring the Word, like, marriage is between a man and a woman. Thank God there is legal protection for the unborn. Israel, the modern state of Israel, has the right to exist. Radical statements like that have landed me on their hate list in times past. So you've got to understand that they've got a worldview that denies God, is very woke, loathes America. At best, their constituency does not understand that the U.S. Constitution is based on the Judeo-Christian moral code, or we call it natural law. Jefferson called it self-evident truth. The constituency base of the SPLC, and they're probably listening right now, and so SPLC operatives, you need Jesus. And he's as close by as a prayer. Please get saved. And stop your fight against truth and against God. And those of us, that tell you that Christ is real and the Bible is God's word, we're not the haters. So please, come on, SPLC. We care about the future of your soul. We really do. But here's the thing. At best, they don't understand the U.S. Constitution, and at worst, they are knowingly using the Constitution to eventually dismantle and undermine the Constitution. So here's the irony. In the woke, relativistic, no boundaries, anything goes world, people are using the tools, abusing the tools of a constitutional republic to destroy the republic. That's why Madison and others said that our Constitution is only made for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the governance of any other. Look, I love the Lord, and Fred, I'm with you. I think we're very likely near the return of Christ. But if we do not have a moral, spiritual, Holy Spirit revival in America, we will devolve and unravel into a Marxist police state. And none of us will live long enough to see civilization restored. But guys, maybe it's another subject for another day, but I happen to believe the Spirit of the Lord is moving, and I think we are in the beginning stages of what could rightly be called a third great awakening.
Oh, amen. I would love to see that, live long enough to see that. Hope that's right around the corner. Alex, you, as I mentioned earlier, you co-host Exploring the Word with Brother Bert Harper. It is on Monday through Friday on American Family Radio at 3 p.m. Central Time. What have you guys got scheduled for today so our listeners can tune in?
Well, thanks, Ed. We are in Romans chapter 8, and in 15 years, the first 2 years was with a dear brother, Marvin Sanders. He's in heaven now. And then for 13 years with Bert, we have been through every verse of God's Word twice. Wow. And we're in the book of Romans, Romans chapter 8. We're heard every day live, 3 to 4 Central Time, 4 to 5 Eastern Time, and in the time zone of your choice, exploring the Word. We've had people on live radio open their heart and accept Christ as their Savior. And so we also take questions, and Fridays is just all questions all the hour. But hey, I got to give a big shout out to Whitley Vitagliano and Wesley Wildman. They've been working on the Activate Summit. My wife and I are going to be in Tupelo June 12th through 14th for the Activate Biblical Worldview Summit. I've got the privilege, I'm speaking on the authority of Scripture, and Frank Turek, a friend of mine for 30 years. Frank is going to be there, Abe Hamilton. And so, guys, forgive my ignorance. I don't know the website. I guess if you go to afa.net, you can find it. But if you can, folks, I would love to see you, love to meet you at this, probably the preeminent biblical worldview conference happening this year. And that's June 12th through 14th in Tupelo.
That is correct. And I think it is now too late to sign up, but we probably, I don't know what we'll have available. We will make things available to folks afterwards. But I'm looking forward to being there and seeing some great speakers. Alex, and hearing some great speakers. Alex, thank you so much for being on with us today.
God bless you guys. Thanks very much.
All right. So let's see. We've got a few minutes left here. Chris, what have you got?
Yes. Well, I want to bring people's attention to some bills that have passed the Texas legislature and are now awaiting signature from Governor Greg Abbott. I would imagine he's probably going to sign these. One of the bills requires the 10 Commandments be in public schools, similar to what Louisiana wants to do. Another bill would also allow for a period of prayer and religious reading time in public schools. So these bills have been approved by the Texas legislature. I'm going to be talking with First Liberty later today to get their reaction to this, because some non-believers are not happy with these bills, as you might imagine. But I do have some audio in the meantime from State Senator Mays Middleton. He is the sponsor of the prayer bill, as I'll call it, and we recently talked with him at AFN for the story. Clip 8.
Senate Bill 11 is about restoring religious liberties in our schools, and what it does is it puts a period of prayer or Bible reading or reading of other religious texts during school hours. Of course, this is with parental consent, and it's purely opt-in. No one is forced to do anything. But what this really comes back to is that our schools are not God-free zones.
I'm going to be checking in with Senator Mays Middleton again today for updates on that as well. And whenever the governor signs it, we'll include his thoughts.
Fred, it sounds totally legal to me. The school is enforcing students to do it.
Yep.
It is, I think, probably student-led. And the Supreme Court has ruled that students do not surrender their First Amendment liberties when they walk into the school door, and teachers don't either.
Yeah.
And we have coming up in August, we have the Truth for Youth Bible campaign. And the foundation of that idea is that students have the right to hand out materials to their classmates. In that case, it happens to be a Bible, but you can hand Bibles out now. That you don't have to wait till August. You can also hand out tracts. You can do all those kinds of things. This kind of goes to what Alex was saying. Our country is in desperate need of an awakening.
Yes.
And Christians are tired of allowing the secularists to give them, quote unquote, permission to do what God calls them to do and what the Constitution allows them to do.
Yeah. And in this bill in Texas, not forcing anybody to do anything, but I think they're giving young people an opportunity. There's a difference between being forced on something and an opportunity. You know, we give kids at schools these days an opportunity to do a lot of different things. I think it's absolutely wonderful that, let's say, for a half hour or 45 minutes, or whatever the case may be, that a Christian student can sit down and say, I'm going to read my Bible during this period. And maybe I'll invite some other kids in my classroom. Maybe they'll ask the question, well, what are you doing during this 45 minutes?
Right.
Well, here's what I'm doing. And by the way, I'm in the Gospel of John today. And look at this. It's John 3:16. Here's what it says. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And maybe that friend of yours, what does that mean?
Right.
And you get an opportunity. And you're not forcing anything on anybody. It's just an opportunity. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. The bill on 10 Commandments,
yes.
Has it been signed by the governor yet?
It is not, but it's awaiting his signature.
And I think it's absolutely wonderful. Again, they're going to have the posting of the 10 Commandments in every classroom in Texas, but taxpayers are not paying for this.
Right.
People can volunteer to buy a copy of the 10 Commandments, and the schools must post them. So if you got a school of 50 classrooms, you want to buy 50 copies of the 10 Commandments, they must now post those. And it's, for us, it's precious. For a lot of people, you can say it's an historic document.
Yes.
It's what our laws were built upon in this. And again, it's an opportunity. 10 Commandments, where did they come from? Well, they come from here. Where did our laws come from? Oh, it looks very similar to me.
Right.
Don't steal.
Right.
all those sorts of things. So praise God that we have states like Texas, Louisiana, and other states that are simply providing opportunities for kids to witness. And praise God for that.
And as we've been mentioning, students are not forced to participate, but you know what they are forced to participate in? In a lot of school districts?
Oh, I know.
The LGBTQ ideology.
Oh, yeah.
So they are forced to hear it,
Yeah.
to see posters all over the place. And one of the craftiest things that the secular left has done is to say, yeah, but that's not a religion.
Yeah.
So the First Amendment protects the freedom of religion, but the secular leftists they're the ones who have built a wall and said religion has to be outside. Inside, we will institute our secular religion, our ideologies and philosophies, and that's allowed, but you're not. And I think Christians are using the leeway they have with the First Amendment, Supreme Court rulings, and laws such as this in Texas to begin to do what, as I said, God calls them to do and the Constitution allows them to do.
Amen.
All right. Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you
for being on with us. We are going to take a 5-minute break for news. And when we come back, we will have Steve Paisley-Jordahl in the house. And we will see what news he brings us. And we'll cover that for you. You're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. We will return shortly.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
How do you choose to stay informed? Sure, you can find all kinds of sources for information and commentary, but when you want them from a Christian perspective, turn to The Stand. Whether you choose to read the online blog or get the print version delivered to your mailbox, you can rest assured you'll receive factual news and biblically sound commentary. Find out more today at afa.net/The Stand.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News on the Hour. I'm Chad Groening. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has announced the Trump administration will revoke visas for Chinese students after the administration barred Harvard University from enrolling international students. RNC Chair Michael Wadley praises the move on Fox and Friends First.
What we don't need to do is use taxpayer dollars to subsidize American, anti-Semitic radicals that are coming into America. We don't need national security threats at our universities.
Harvard has sued the Trump administration over its actions, and a judge temporarily blocked the administration from barring international students at Harvard. The Trump administration is also pausing the scheduling of new appointments for people applying for student visas. Meanwhile, National Public Radio is suing the Trump administration to get back the federal funding the president zeroed out in an executive order earlier this month. AFN Steve Jordahl reports it may have a case.
First blush, many conservatives react by saying NPR and PBS can say whatever they want, but they can't force taxpayers to fund it. But Ellis points out that if the political parties were reversed and a Democrat president was trying to retaliate against a conservative outlet.
What if a conservative radio station was taking taxpayer funding and the Biden administration said, you know what, I don't really like that you're talking about God, for example, you are against gay marriage, some of those things, so I'm going to take away your taxpayer funding. We as conservatives would likely say, hey, you can't do that.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
The FBI is promising an investigation into the city of Seattle and its mayor, Bruce Harrell, for, quote, targeted violence against religious groups after Antifa thugs broke up 2 Christian rallies in front of City Hall, and the mayor blamed the Christians. AFR talk show host Todd Herman says the mayor sided with Antifa over the Christians.
But the mayor's telling the truth. Seattle is anti-Christian. He's making truthful statements. The entire structure of Seattle government is anti-Christian. It's a racist and probably passively satanic, since they consider themselves atheist city. That city gave Black Lives Matter Incorporated groups and Antifa groups $1 billion. They gave them an uncommissioned firehouse as property, real estate. They haven't infiltrated anything. If speaking truth biblically is inciting violence, then I guess this really gets down to the bottom line of who are these people in Seattle? They are people who respond violently to the Word of God.
In his press release, Mayor Harrell said the, quote, far-right rallies were held here to provoke a reaction by promoting beliefs that are opposed to our city's values. And he promised to look into whoever gave the Christians a permit for the rallies. A pro-life group is disappointed with its state legislature. AFN's Chris Woodward has that story.
The Texas House did not vote against the Woman and Child Protection Act, but Kim Schwartz of Texas Right to Life says representatives delayed the clock so long that the bill died in the legislative process.
The Texas legislature only meets for 5 months every other year. That means that time is the biggest enemy, and if lawmakers aren't using their time prudently to pass important bills that save babies from abortion, then these bills are going to die. And that's exactly what happened with the Woman and Child Protection Act this year.
The Woman and Child Protection Act ranked as the top pro-life bill of 2025 and sought to stop the biggest threat to preborn children, abortion pills sent to Texas from other states and countries. Instead of brick-and-mortar clinics, Schwartz says abortion groups sell these deadly pills online or sneak them over the border.
Texas won't have another chance until 2027 to save babies from chemical abortions, unless Governor Abbott calls a special session for the Woman and Child Protection Act.
In the meantime, Schwartz encourages pro-life individuals to get educated on these and other topics and engage with friends and family members.
By spreading the message of life, we can continue to save these babies and take action where lawmakers neglected to do so.
I'm Chris Woodward.
Remember, you can access American Family News 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by logging on to afn.net, or you can download the AFN app. And that is American Family News on the Hour. I'm Chad Groening.
It's amazing how fast things can change. The breaking news you hear in the morning can take on a whole new life by that evening. And some days there's so much happening you really need a whole team of journalists to keep up with it all. The American Family News app not only gives you that team, you get a biblical perspective on politics, pro-life, education, and much more wherever you are. Stay on top of the latest news facing Christians today. Get the AFN app from your app store and you'll never miss a thing.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back, everybody. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl joins us.
Good morning.
Good morning
everybody.
/ good afternoon.
And that's right. And good evening if you're listening to us in Moscow.
Yes. We got a large contingent of people in Moscow.
Well, you never
listening.
know. We have an app. It could reach there.
That's true. And you know what? Who knows? Maybe there's people in China.
Yeah.
China,
China.
who are listening.
Yeah, you
never know.
They'd have to pay a tax or a tariff of 20% if they're listening to us. We'll take that. It's 20% of zero is what? Zero.
It's
is
zero.
Still free. Okay.
Yeah. Listen, we actually do hear from people periodically who are around the world somewhere listening on the app. So as Tim always says, that app was a game changer. We during Share-a-thon, sometimes we will get donations from people in places like Washington State or California, and we don't have stations there.
Did you know that you can listen to AFR on Roku?
Yes, I think that's right.
No, it is right. I know
Okay,
because I have the app on my TV.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So that would be through the Roku app and not. So you can listen on your computer if you want, but on your Roku,
if you're watching TV, you just have it on. Like sometimes people I like to put YouTube, like if I'm doing dishes or something, I want some music. I'll put YouTube on and like
playlist.
Yeah. Well, usually I'll put it on something like Mahler's Second Symphony.
Oh,
glorious music.
They released a rock album, didn't they?
They
the 70s?
did. Second Symphony. It was Queen, I think, did the cover. No, Mahler's Second Symphony is called Resurrection, and it has a choral bit at the end that I performed, and it brings me to tears every time I hear it. It is just the most beautiful music.
So your go-to when you're doing the dishes, and I'm like you, I like doing the dishes. I like cleaning and organizing. My wife mocks me a little bit. But
you let me know what music you like, and I'll have it on for you.
See, what I was saying is, when I'm doing that kind of stuff, I'm not going with symphonies. I'm listening to some golden oldies or something. But hey, to each his own. If it brings you to tears,
well, one of the reasons I do the symphonies is because it's like 2 hours long, so I don't have to.
How many dishes do you have?
Well, I don't know, but I have more than 3 minutes worth. I have to go out every 3 minutes and
yes, because you got to go to the
a new song.
Breaking news: God created dishwashers.
Well, yeah. Work smart, not hard.
All right, Steve, what do you got for us?
All right,
story-wise.
Let's start here. Yesterday, we got a press release. I just found this from Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. They have arrested an illegal immigrant that says he's going to self-deport, but not before assassinating the president. This is the note he left. I'll read this. We are tired of this president messing with us Mexicans. We have done more for this country than you white people. You have been deporting my family, and I think it's time Donald J. Trump get what he has coming to him. I will self-deport myself back to Mexico, but not before I use my 30-yard six to shoot your precious president in his head. I will see him at one of his big rallies. I think he means 30-yard six.
Yeah, I was going to say 30-yard six.
Well,
30-yard six.
30-yard six. So anyway, this gentleman, Ramon Morales Reyes, has been arrested by ICE officers. Safe to say he will not be attending a rally for the president.
Wow. Well, that's listen, folks, you're listening. If you're Christian, please pray for the president, because this is probably not unusual. I mean, the left is just there's a bloodlust within the radical left that is shocking. I'm not saying surprising, but it's just startling. And this kind of thing, there are people who aren't going to post it and give advance notice. So thank goodness and thank the Lord for Secret Service and the FBI who keep an eye on these things and investigate and, when necessary, arrest somebody.
It is interesting to note that this gentleman said that we Mexicans are tired of the president. However, the latest poll ratings out, and I'm reading this from MSN, and they found that Hispanic voters were one of the key groups who proved important in the election. But the demographic generally leans Democrat. According to an Insider Advantage poll of 1,000 likely voters, 59.6% of Hispanics approve of Trump's job approval. Yeah. So he's above water by almost 10 points above.
Right.
So this gentleman saying that we Mexicans are tired of your president, he speaks for himself.
Yeah. Fred, it's I can certainly understand that people who listened to the urging of President Biden, and when he said, "Come, we'll give you health care," all this kind of stuff, I can certainly understand their disappointment and their anger when now the law is being upheld and they're being deported. Yes. I certainly can understand that, but they, at least on some level, I would think, had to know this free ride was going to end. Yeah. And so what are your thoughts on what this guy is saying?
Well, as you said, thank God for our Secret Service. Thank God for our FBI and others that are keeping a very close watch on this. I think it's absolutely incredible what the Trump administration has done since coming into office just over 100 days ago.
Yeah.
When it comes to the security of our border, when you have spots along that southern border where 3, 4, 5,000 a day were coming across, now it's down to nothing or maybe just a trickle. Yeah. That's all. So the message has gone out to the world since Donald Trump was sworn into office once again. You're not welcome here unless you do it the right way.
Right.
And that's another thing. It's the way the mainstream media has treated Trump, that he's against immigrants. No, he's not. He just wants people to do it the right way, the way it's supposed to. We have laws. We have a border for a reason because countries are defined by borders. You know what's really interesting? When you're looking now at some of these European nations that were kind of wide open to immigrants.
Right.
Now they're backtracking on all of this because of the problems that happen. Listen, if you're the kind of person that believes I have a right to break into this country and then take advantage of the various programs and that sort of thing, it's not long before you're doing illegal things.
Right. Well,
and you don't appreciate what this country stands for. Most people, I think, who do it the right way say they want to come to America because they think America is one of the finest countries in the world. And by the way, it gives me an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because that's what drove immigration through the years. You know, I want the opportunity that America provides for me. And I don't want to break in. I want to do it legally because I want to become a legal citizen. And I want to have the opportunity to, not only for myself, but for my family. That's what immigration used to be about. And unfortunately, under Joe Biden, and, it's really interesting. I don't want to wander too much. Fox lately has been playing some clips of Barack Obama. His attitude towards people entering this country illegally. You are going to be deported is what Barack Obama said.
Yes.
And unfortunately, under Joe Biden, and I always keep going by, back to this. When Joe Biden was running for president, what did he say during a debate? I'll invite a surge.
Yes.
He kept his promise, unfortunately, to the detriment of this country.
Right.
I would categorize the Biden surge comment and the Democrats' love of immigrants to the fact that Donald Trump wanted to put up a wall. He wanted to stop it. Barack Obama talked the good game. He said, we'll deport you, but there was a lot of people coming across the border, which is why he wanted to build that wall in the first place. Once Donald Trump said, I'm for a wall or to stop immigration, reflexively, the Democrats said, well, then we want open borders. Not in those words. Here's another thing I'll add that's a little add-on to what Fred said, which is even if you come in the right way, you don't have the right to be here. The United States can determine who it wants to let in the country. So if I know this has gone around, one of the immigration people, one of President Trump's cabinets, I think, said something along the lines of, it was Rubio, if we find out you're a student and you're here on a visa, you're here legally, but the reason you came here was to foment on campuses violence and such, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
And the United States has every right to bring in people that will benefit the country. That's what, until Western Europe opened itself up, immigration traditionally has been we bring in people who will benefit the country and who want to assimilate. Like Fred, he's doing so well with his English since he assimilated.
Merci bien.
I think except for Quebec, most Canadians speak English.
Really?
I think so. Yeah.
Well, they are the 51st state to be.
They speak English, eh? All right. What else you got?
All right. I know. I'm sorry that Tim is not here to take this story because I know how much he loves a good race hoax story.
Yes.
And so what we're finding out is that Colorado Springs has its first African-American mayor. Colorado Springs, Colorado is traditionally a very strong Republican stronghold. It happens to be the home of Focus on the Family. You guys were talking with Alex earlier about that. And a number of other ministries. It was Ministry Central starting in the 1980s. The city gave wonderful tax breaks to ministries that wanted to come out, and many, many did. Anyway, the city itself is still fairly red. However, in the last mayoral election, this Mayor Yemi Mobolade, he ran against a guy named Wayne Williams, a white Republican. So Mobolade ran as a Democrat, a centrist Democrat. They tied, or they were close enough that they had to have a runoff. During the runoff, someone scrawled the N-word on one of Mobolade's campaign signs and lit a cross on fire in front of it. But fairly close to the election. He won the election. Many people say the sympathy vote.
Yeah.
You know? Well, it turns out that the the mayor was behind the hoax. It was a hoax. The guy that wrote it was a black guy that wanted the mayor to win, that wrote the N-word on the campaign sign and lit the cross on fire, and he had been in contact by phone with the mayor prior. So
wow,
there's
now
this court case going on.
Has this person admitted to being to doing this on behalf of the mayor with the mayor's knowledge? Well, I mean, first of all, the fact that it was a hoax is bad enough. We need more things to divide us in this country. But what is there any provable tie?
Well, they have
the mayor?
convicted the guy that did the actual crime or hoax was a guy named Derek Bernard, who they list here as a black media personality in Colorado Springs. He has been convicted last week of faking the hate crime against Mayor Mobolade to gin up votes for him. And this guy testified that the mayor was in on it. So that's where they've convicted this guy. Now they're going to be, I'm sure there's an investigation into the mayor of Colorado Springs now.
You know, Fred, I'm not saying there aren't racists in this country. In fact, I'll say there are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'm not saying that there aren't homophobes in this country. In fact, I will say there are.
I don't like that term.
Which term?
Homophobe.
Oh, okay. Can I finish my statement here?
Yes.
And then you feel, after Fred, feel free to jump in here. But I cannot think of a case in which one of these actions of whether it's, scrawling an epithet about, gay people or black people, when it was done by an actual racist or homophobe.
Yeah.
Okay, they almost always seem to be done by those who are squawking the most about whether it's racism or homophobia or whatever term Steve wants to use. And this, I'm not shocked by this story.
Sadly, that we have people for political reasons are willing to stoop to this kind of thing. I think what has happened in this country, I'll say it, and I'm dating myself here, the discipline that most of us who are over 60 grew up with, in our homes.
Yeah.
We had moms and dads who disciplined us.
Yeah.
We had neighbors, moms and dads, that if we did something bad in their backyard, we were disciplined. We were disciplined at school.
Right.
If we said something wrong. And, and it went on from there.
And then you got disciplined at home again.
Discipline at home. Our churches would discipline a youth group. So there were guidelines that were in place, and nobody got offended by that because that was the expectation. I think what we're reaping, what we have sown in our culture, is that I have a right to say, to do anything that I want. And by the way, it's all about winning. And if I have to do something that is wrong in other people's eyes, well, I don't care. Right. I mean, it's absolutely horrible. In the last couple of days, what's gone on in the Seattle area. There was the incident of the Christian group. I think we talked about this.
2 incidents.
When you had Antifa members who supposedly were the opposing group, but they created the violence, and then the mayor of Seattle was defending Antifa. But then last night down in Tacoma, just south of Seattle, some people were out at a park, and somebody opened fire. Nobody knows the motivation for this, but I think there were 5 people who were wounded there. So that kind of discipline that used to be in place. When I was growing up, incidents of people just shooting at people, I mean, it was almost unheard of.
Right.
Even in our big cities.
And there were plenty of guns around.
Yes.
At the time.
Yeah. But I think we've taken away those barriers that were meant to be in place to weed out the bad actors, but also to raise the expectation there are rights and there are wrongs. And we expect you as a citizen to behave in a right fashion, because if you don't, there will be real consequences.
Right.
That's the other thing that has happened. We've taken away the consequences. We've taken away the consequences of bad behavior.
Right.
We just let people, all of a sudden, discipline, even in the home, there was, the new philosophy. Oh no, just Johnny should go to the corner for a while, or he needs a timeout.
Right.
That sort of thing. No, they need discipline. And I'm old enough to believe that, spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah, because that's in the Bible.
Yes.
All right, Steve, go ahead now with the homophobe thing.
First of all, I apologize for jumping in on you.
No,
the gate
it's okay.
The gate didn't come down in time. But
that's what we do here on this show. Constant flow.
Homophobe, to me, is one of those made-up terms the left has to pin something on a Republican or a conservative because they don't have a real word for what it is, because we're not scared of them.
Right.
And
that's what homophobia technically means. Yeah.
And in practice, it's supposed to mean we hate them. We don't hate people. We disagree with their choices. We disagree with the assertion that what they do is moral and has value for a society. But it's a disagreement.
Right.
We should be in a civil society, talk it out. My Twitter feed, I'm coming across more and more examples of this. I came across every day I'll hear 2 or 3 videos, police videos, body cam videos of a policeman coming up to a car and telling a person, you need to get out, and the person saying, no, I don't have to. I don't have to do what you tell me.
It quickly escalates.
Yeah, well, they get him out generally, but the whole time it's saying, why? You don't have a right to arrest me. You don't have a right to do this. I have a right to a phone call. No. And I saw also this morning, it's graduation season, and there was a graduation going on. I don't know what college it was, but the graduates would come up, and one of the administrators had a microphone. They were supposed to say their name and their major into the microphone and then walk up and get their diploma. Well, this one gal wanted to say more, apparently. So when the college professor, whoever was holding the mic, pulled it away and started to go to the next person, this gal grabbed the mic, literally wrestled it away, almost put this administrator on the ground, walked off saying, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'm graduating today with a degree in blah, blah, blah. And since you didn't give me my time to say what I wanted on my day, this whole day is now about me. And she slams the mic down on the grass.
A literal mic drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, it's clear our society, at least, I don't know how big the percentage is, but there is a significant percentage of our country that, and this cuts across all, categories of people, but a significant percentage that just think the rules don't apply to them. And really, when we were talking about one of the last stories, when you have the President of the United States saying, we know it's breaking the law, but y'all come anyway. What is that telling the people who live here and are trying to live by the rules? It's that the rules don't apply. And
when they introduced victimhood, when being a victim started being currency, then you could claim victimhood, and it gave you the right to
free pass.
Yeah, free pass to do whatever, however you wanted to act.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. What else we got?
Every year up in the Great White North, Fred again will know about this. Their parliament starts with what they call the King's Speech. The Queen it was before, but now the King Charles comes over and he sits down and he gives a speech to open the Canadian Parliament because Canada is still part of the Commonwealth of the United Kingdom. And he interestingly, this is the way King Charles started this particular King's Speech. This is cut 9, and Adam will bail out of this in the middle. I'll just tell you when to cut. Cut 9.
I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and the Shinabeg people. This land acknowledgement is a recognition of shared history as a nation, while continuing to deepen my own understanding.
So,
well, Fred, let me just say this. I've said in the past that the British accent makes people sound smarter, but not in this case.
No.
Listen, this kind of virtue signaling, we see this a lot on the part of countries and politicians and celebrities and people who are of political importance, as in this case, doing the virtue signaling to hopefully make everyone think that you are woke. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, why talk about shared history? Listen, we certainly want to increase understanding amongst different groups, but the fact of the matter is that the British and the French, in fact, they fought over it. They took Canada. They conquered it. And they took the land from the people who, so did we. And so do countries all through history.
Took it from.
Yes, that's right.
They took it from someone else, too.
I always say, listen, you want to talk about the Native Americans, the Comanche Indians wiped out entire tribes. They don't even exist anymore. Okay, so this is part of the sinful nature of man, and certainly don't want to excuse that kind of thing, but don't virtue signal because Canada's not giving the land back.
Well, I think he should. He's the king.
Yes.
He should just give it back.
All right, you get your final comments. You get 30 seconds, Fred.
Yeah, it's usually called a speech from the throne. Very unusual for the king or the queen to come and do that. By the way, he doesn't write that speech. It's the government of Canada.
That did it?
The Prime Minister's office writes the speech.
Oh, wow.
So they have the new Prime Minister up there, Mark Carney. He was just trying to score some points.
The other shoe drops.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, no, I know you made that clear.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that is all the time we have for this edition of Today's Issues. Tomorrow, Lord willing, we're going to have Trivia Friday. We're just going to kick back. We're coming in shorts, short sleeves, shorts, flip-flops. Not really, but we're going to have some fun tomorrow. More great programming directly ahead on American Family Radio. Lord willing, we will see you tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, I wanted to make you aware of our trips to Israel and Greece in 2026. We're going in March.